Hello, ski racing fans, and welcome to the American Downhillers Podcast, Season 2, Episode 6. I'm two-time Olympian Doug Lewis, and with me is World Championship medalist AJ Kitt and Hahnenkamm winner Darren Rolfs. Marco is unable to be here as he is off coaching his young American downhillers to ski super fast. Today, we are talking about the longest downhill on the circuit and the downhill that has the most interesting terrain features on the planet. From jumping off a cliff to 290-degree turns, to skiing through a tunnel, to going upwards of 100 miles an hour. It is Wengen's 2 minutes, 30-second downhill called the Lauberhorn. And as our special guest, we have the second American downhiller ever to win it. He also won Kvitfjell downhill and was a member of 3 Olympic teams. Please welcome Kyle Rasmussen. Where are you joining us from?
I am sitting at home. I just got off work a little early so I could join you guys, and I'm thrilled. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Yeah, that's awesome to have you, Ras. We have guests on periodically, and you're the one I'm the most excited about that we've had in the last 2 years. It's awesome to have an old teammate on, and I was there when you won, boy. So that was like, man, I still get kind of goosebumps when I think about it because it was such a cool day, and I can't wait to hear your stories about starting bib 1 and having to stand there all day while the whole world took shots at you.
So I remember, Ras, I remember you as a young rookie coming up when I was a vet and I was intimidated by you because you were massive. You never talked and you had this weird scar on your chest that you said you got from a horse biting you. Is that true?
That is totally true. When I was 11 years old working on the ranch with my grandpa, I got bit by a mare who just had a foal. And so, yes, I do have a gnarly scar on my chest from when
You're missing half a boob, dude.
Right.
So, AJ, you mentioned it, but Darren, how did Ras fit into your career, and what was he like as a teammate?
Well, on my era, it was 3 big guns: AJ, Mo, and Ras. And I was coming on the team just trying to learn as much as I could and keep up with these guys. They're all skiing fast. They all had like wins under their belt at the most elite level, World Cup and Olympics, and it was really exciting as a young kid joining the downhill team and just being around that kind of level. That level was impressive, and that's where I wanted to be. So I had 3 guys to really kind of watch during training and the races, and just kind of pick up stuff from these guys and try and mold my own program together. But yeah. When Kyle won, I remember I was in the van over in Europe and just heard all this craziness, coming across the radio, and American Kyle Rasmussen, Lauberhorn. We're like, did they just say he won? Mm-hmm. And it pumped us up, and we were just yelling in the van, all fired up, and that was, yeah, I mean, that was one vivid memory I have from like being over in Europe and before I made the team at that level on the World Cup side.
So, Kyle, let's just jump into Wengen, 1995. Tell us about that run, and did you know it was fast?
So, I felt like I had a good run. It was an interesting year. We were doubling up downhills at every venue. It was an odd snow year, like you quite often get. And we had just come. I knew I was skiing good, but we had just come from Kitzbühel, and I think we had a double at Kitzbühel, and they used to do Kitzbühel before Wengen, and I had. Things were just derailing. I don't know what was going on. I was having troubles. I had a pre-release at Kitzbühel on the style hung and managed to ski out of it without wrecking, and then finished like 54th. And I'm like, where is this going? I don't know what's going on. I felt like I was skiing the best I've ever skied. Went to Wengen for a double. In the first race on Friday, I was 10th. Felt good about my performance. Top 10, that's good. Snows overnight, draw bib 1. So I moved, by getting 10th, I moved into the draw because I believe I was outside the top 30. I moved into the draw and went all the way to 1. Terrible draw number for overnight snow. And when I looked at the course in the morning, it was perfectly groomed corduroy like I would ski here in California, soft as can be. There was no injection, there was no ice. And I go, well, this is going to be fun. I can do this. And that was kind of the goal for the day, was to just kind of go ski as clean as I can, be as light as I could on the edges, and have as much fun as possible. And that's kind of important on that course. And ironically, I was just as fast that day as I was the day before, and the course was substantially slower. So I had an idea that it was a good run, but it was a long way.
AJ, were you in that race?
Yeah, I was in that race. I don't even remember what number I ran, but I do remember knowing that Kyle was at the bottom in the lead. And I do remember, 90, this was 95. I mean, we had some good results that year as a team. We were on the podium a lot, him and Tommy and me. And my big thing in my career that never happened, but I really wanted it to, which we kind of experienced last week with the ladies, was I wanted to share a podium with a teammate. And I wanted to take that another step and sweep, right? I wanted to sweep a European podium with all Americans. To me, that would have been like planting the flag, right on the top of the mountain. And every week that year, it felt like we could do it. And that hearing that he was leading the race I'm like, okay, this is a great chance for us to do this. And yeah, it didn't work out for me. But like we talked about this at the beginning or before we started recording, Lou. I mean, I didn't ever have any good results at Wengen. It's just a course I could never really unwind in my head, like figure out the rhythm. And you get going really fast, they shut you down for some turns and a jump, you get going really fast again and shut it down. And I just never found the rhythm at Wengen. It just never really clicked with me and my style of thinking about it all. But it was sure fun to be there that day and watch Kyle win that race. And it's always fun when the Americans, go to a big one like that. Like, Darren, when you won Kitzbühel, my win in Val d'Isere wasn't as impactful because it was just Val d'Isere. But, when an American goes and wins the Lauberhorn or the Hahnenkamm or some of these other big, the big 5 races, the big, classics, it's a big deal. And most of European fans really appreciate the sport, and they appreciate athletes that do well. They don't care if they're American or Norwegian or European or whatever. And I think that was a big day for us. It was a big day. I think a lot of Euros really liked the fact that we're broadening, that day we broadened the scope of who's competitive in the world of downhill. And that was a huge freaking day, man.
Yeah. Obviously with those conditions and how it played out that day, I really didn't think it would hold. I really didn't. Yeah. And
it shouldn't have. I mean, to be honest,
really shouldn't have.
How many races have you been in where you ran first and it felt okay, and it was just like
right, exactly. And I believe Werner Franz, who ended up second in that race, started bib 3, and I only beat him by like 500ths. And I thought, well, obviously I'm not going to win the race, because he wasn't one of the big powerhouses of the Austrian team at that point. And funny story about that is a couple of years earlier in the Europa Cup there, when I started figuring Wengen out, Werner Franz won and I was second. And then a few years later in the World Cup, I won and he was second. And I had to remind him of that on the podium that day.
You won the better race, that's for sure.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, Wengen's typically like a noon start, pretty late, and you get a lot of sun. And with that new snow, do you think that was that slowed some guys down the top? What was kind of like the split that were coming out? Did you have a good lead at the top, or did you make up time in the middle, or where'd you win it?
I actually won it in the S turn at the bottom. I don't think I had the fastest split off the top because it got a little glaze going up there and it got faster and faster, but I just had untracked all the way through. And what was going on is once you come into the Hoonshaft and it started breaking down, and those guys were dealing with some ruts, and I just had corduroy the entire course. I was able to literally carve every single turn down that whole course, even the road. I think I carved that day. And so it was just like ridiculously easy is what it felt like. But I think Tommy ran 10 that day. I want to say he was bib 10, and he came down. He had no idea it was in the lead. He didn't like to pay attention to that stuff at the start, and he did a double take at the finish. And then he came over and high fives and says, "Rash, you got it. The course is trashed." And, and that's kind of how it went. The Armin Assinger, I think, was bib, I want to say 13. And he was way ahead coming into the S turn, not way ahead, but like 4/10, quite a bit going into the S turns right at the bottom at like the 2-minute 10 point, and ends up third, like 1300s behind or something like that. So I definitely got him on the bottom. And that made me feel good, because that's kind of the key to that course, is whether you're strong enough to handle those last couple turns.
Yeah, you gotta have fuel in the tank, and just it's one of those sections where everybody's tired. You're fighting through it, but I mean, it's like that. Just you gotta have that grit and bear down. And I remember that was kind of like a deciding factor for me too. I had a little bit of lead. I was able to stretch it open a little bit more at the bottom, because I just ripped those like last 2 turns, and those are. I mean, when you hit those just right, it feels so good. But obviously, you had those turning skills, and yeah, like at the top being glazed, those guys are getting a little advantage, being a little faster, but you out skied them the rest of the way, which is awesome. And
yeah, it felt good, that's for sure.
right behind you, just so everybody else knows, you got the Wengen specials, right? The downhill board you went on that day.
Right, Curtis Baca's got them numbered, the 2095 Wengen specials right there. And ironically, they're the same skis I had at Kvitville.
No way.
They worked there too. And that was another double downhill.
That's right.
Double downhill. The first one, you guys remember, got canceled. And then we restarted and went for a second run, and I won that one.
That was the makeup. That race I think you won in Quitfield was the makeup for the Aspen race that I won that was canceled like 2 weeks earlier.
Right. I think what happened is the first race in Kvitville, Paratoner was winning, and it got postponed because of fog, and we protested because they canceled Aspen on you.
Yep.
So we got it thrown out, and then we restarted for a second race, which was the Kvitville race, and that's the one I won.
Yep.
So he needs to give you the trophy then, AJ.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, so Ras, correct me if I'm wrong here, but here's a little, behind the scenes story. And I hear this from Egan every time we start talking about Wengen and Ras's, climb to the top of the world of downhill. The story goes like this, that, you went all these years racing and, started complaining in the off season that year before about, not really being able to focus real well on the snow. And you went to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor's like, your vision sucks. You need glasses. And they gave you contact lenses, and you went out and won your first World Cup race. Is that right? How close am I?
That could be pretty accurate. I didn't realize how blind I was. And but I also didn't realize how difficult it was to ski with contacts. That posed some problems in itself. But it was amazing when you can see things, how well you can, cut through it.
Oh, well, yeah. How fast you can ski.
Right.
When you can see where you're going.
So
right.
I'm interested. I know AJ is a strong skier. He loves the gliding. That's his strength. D-Money, he's a smaller guy, but so it's all about attack and aggression. Ras, what were your strengths? Like, describe yourself as a downhiller. And if you're not going to do it, I'll ask these guys.
He was damn powerful, that's for sure. The power was on your side, man.
Right. I think I developed some pretty darn good gliding skills. I was always kind of a stiff guy. I was bigger, but I couldn't get in a super low bully like some of these guys. But I did find what was fast for me, and I learned how to glide really well. And I grew up pretty strong in the technical side, so I could turn too. But I had that darn stiff back, so I skied kind of stiff and couldn't get in a great tuck. But I would say I would describe myself as a powerful, big downhiller with kind of rounded skills.
With great touch. Obviously, you mentioned that, come from California, skiing at Bear Valley with soft snow, and that day being fresh snow in Wengen. Yeah. Also, I just remember just how strong you stood on that ski. I mean, you created so much force, and I mean, yeah, you had some weight, but you're really strong, and you're able to kind of bend those big Solomon downhill boards and get
2x4s behind me there.
Get some some rebounds, some acceleration out of them.
Right.
Like, that was
You
a
know,
good package for sure.
That's definitely true. And the soft snow was my forte. And I wasn't great on the ice and the injected snow they do nowadays. That was always hard for me. But when we had those soft conditions, and I definitely excelled.
Hey, Doug Lewis here. If you've ever dreamed of traveling to Wengen or Kitzbühel to watch the classic World Cup downhills, then the ADL Ski Club is for you. Their small group trips are geared for passionate skiers and race fans. They take you to the heart of ski racing's biggest races at the Lauberhorn, Hahnenkamm, and Night Slalom in Schladming. This year, American downhiller AJ Kidd is leading the group to Kitzbühel, and they have a ton of special access to the races, parties, and athletes that make this World Cup unique among all professional sports. Even though this year's trips are both sold out, right now is the perfect time to get your name on the list for next year's trips. Visit adlskiclub.com. That's adlskiclub.com and reach out to them to secure your spot. Rumor has it that I might even be joining them for one of these trips soon. So there's so much to this course, as we all know. Let's start with you, Ras. Let's talk about your favorite spot, and why, and then we'll just go around and try to make sure that we hit all the crazy spots of this Wengen course. But what's your favorite?
The whole course, really, to be honest with you, it's so long. You have to get in a different frame of mind, really, for this course, and it took a long time to figure that out. Because you gotta, I mean, obviously you're going 100% the whole way down, but when you go 2.7 miles, you better have something left in the tank at the bottom, or you're really going to be hurting. And that section from the Honningschuss down is, that's kind of money down there. And you're going almost 100 miles an hour with some big sweeping turns below there and some nice terrain. And then you got these two cranker 90-degreers going into the finish when you're totally gassed out. And I would have to say that's like the spot that stands out to me in that course. The road, the S turn below the Honningschuss, or below the Hohenschaft, that was obviously a very unique to Wengen thing where you're going 70 to 20 and then back up to 70 15 seconds later. And that's what makes Wengen pretty unique as well.
So for me, I hated the top 45 seconds because I wasn't a great glider. I wasn't very heavy. So it started right above the Hohenschaft for me, ripping that left footer, gearing up for the Hohenschaft, which is just a cliff. And when I ran it, you wanted to be far right. So you just clipped that pole. I don't know why, if it was set maybe differently, but you just aim for that pole, and they have these little, little fluffy flags on it. So if you were that close, you would just hit it. Bigger flight, but somehow straighter, land over the Mitch Conte into Canadian corner. So that played to my strengths, the agility and the attack. That's what I just loved. And it was like nonstop. It was just amazing. The elevator shaft of the Hohenschaft.
Yeah, just thinking about that course right now gives me anxiety. I to be honest, I just, like I always say, I've never figured that one out, and I still have anxiety about it because it was really the only place I just knew going in. I had no chance. And that's just why, Lou, like you talk about, like, you're ripping down the top 30 or 40 seconds into that, that giant left footer above Hohenschaft, and I just feel the speed going away, and I'm like, no, and then it's trying to bend those old skis, there's no way you could do it. So you just like step over on your right foot and wait till you drop off the Hohenschaft, but then it accelerates again. You got that really fun, jump, land, turn around Canadian corner, you get ripping again, and then it all happens all over again. You shut it down in the Kern and S turns, and you got to pick up the speed again. So that, to me, that's what I think about when I think of Wengen is that series of rhythm changes throughout the course of, above Hohenschaft, through S turns and under the tunnel. Everything else to me was like, from the down the bottom there, I guess, Honningschuss and down to the bottom, and those bottom turns didn't present as much problem to me. In the top section was just a, sort of regular stuff, but it's just that middle minute that I hated.
D Money, what stood out for you? Maybe how did you win it on your run? Where?
Well, before I even showed up to Wengen the first time, I was pretty much, counting myself out. Just because everybody told me like, this is a big downhillers course. It's a lot of gliding. You're not going to have a chance. It's like not going to be one of your tracks that you can excel at. And I was like, man, this is like one of those classics. I need to figure it out. So I was kind of going in there like, what can I find that I can play to my strengths there? And you know what? Just I love just the atmosphere, the whole. It's a hassle going up to that start, right? You get on the train, you got to take a lift, and it takes a long time. But it's like I would just kind of embrace that whole experience. And then really just being around, just seeing that Eiger and just the massive mountains around there. I kind of somewhat harness some energy from just like the natural surroundings. But coming out of the start gate, like I looked at that left footer, like the first turn. You get out of the gate and you start as hard as you can and try and get the speed up, and then it's a straight shot to this big long left footer. And I was like, you know what? If I can trim a little line here and hit this just right, where it's like one of those big pendulum turns where you take all the speed out. The turn, if I could ski that better than anybody else, I'll have a little bit of a chance on the top flat. And I kind of really focused on that section up there because I felt like if I was within about 5/10 when I'm at the Hoonshaft, I had a good chance of out skiing the rest of the guys from there down. And that's kind of where I, was that one day I won. And I think it's so unique. It has like all those elements of like gliding, some big jumps, like even that top jump where you see all those like really cool side angles of just Wengen in the background. You're like in the air, it's like a big drop off there and you see the town down below you. But that was some good flight. And then, Lou, about that coming off the Hoonshaft, like I kind of looked at that line too, more direct on the right side. It's bigger drop, but it's more direct. You don't have to come back as much. And to me, I'm always trying to find ways to cut down the line and using a bunch of those like tactics, on that course. And the one thing that really stood out my winning race run was coming down that track at the Canadian quarter, Hoonshaft, Minchkante, Canadian corner, and going by that fence. And it's like a F1 track. You're just flying by this thing. Your shoulders like rubbing up against that. And I was like trying to get the timing just right where I could nail that panel on the corner of the bank. And if I had that, like I was in a tight line, I could get my right foot again early and take all that speed down around the corner into that, into the train tunnel. And on race day, I was just basically committed. It was one of those Braveheart moments where you're like, hold, and go, with everything you had. And I slammed that gate and, just was on fire. And that was kind of one of those things I had in my mind. And if I do that, I just thought like, then I had like a ton of speed for that next middle section. Like we always thought, because Ras, when you won, bud, you were shooting through that tunnel and the train was going over the top of you, right?
Right.
We always thought that like, if the train's going over the top, then you
Good luck.
You've got some little extra luck there, some extra speed or whatever. And I remember like in that race run looking for that train. I was like, damn it, it's not there. I just feel like it was one of those things like whoever's got that train over the top, it's just a little extra, bonus.
That is one of the most unique pieces of downhill in any race. The Kernan S, I think they used to call it the water station before Bruno Kernan splatted himself into it and they renamed it for him. But I would always come out of there on the bank and, I'm running over treetops, buried pine trees. And I'm just like, oh God, that's how I would gauge how bad I ran that section was how many trees I had to run over to get back on course. But then you take that next right, and you drop down under the train tunnel. And you can't talk about Wengen without at least giving a shout out to the old movie, The Downhill Racer from the 60s. And we all know Joe J. Jalbert, the consummate, ski film professional. And, he was a stunt guy in that movie back in the 60s. And his other, partner that was a stunt guy was Eddie Waldberger, who was the tuner for myself and for Darren and a few others. And people that watch that will see that the skier in the movie crashes and runs into the side of the train tunnel. And that was I think that was Eddie, right? Doing that stunt.
Yeah, Eddie
So-
got another 100 Swiss francs for that crash into the
Yeah,
tunnel
so-
wall. That was his
so
story.
going to Wengen's, it's always fun for reasons like that. But anybody that's listening, that's a great fun movie to watch from back in the day. Robert Redford, and it's got a lot of history because the people that were in that movie carried forward and were part of the sport for a really long time.
You know, as rad was that whole season leading the off season leading up to that last year of mine, 06, when I won. I was watching that downhill racer weekly. At the end of the season, Michelle and I went on a little vacation. I think we come back from Costa Rica and had all these miles, stacked up. So we're flying first class, and in the row in front of me is Robert Redford, and he's reading this fat script. And I was like, oh, I was just sweating it. I'm like, I gotta introduce myself and say hello to this guy. And I finally got the courage when we were getting up and leaving the plane. And I told him that basically his role in downhill racers was my life, that's what I was doing. And he knew it was incredible. He either has a photographic memory or it made a huge impression on him. But he was talking about the Post Hotel where we stayed, the US ski team stayed. He was asking about, talking about the train ride up there and how cool it is to be race under the Eiger. And he touched on Kitzbühel. I mean, we had about a 5-minute conversation, hanging out and then walking off the plane. And I thought that was so cool. And
Wend produces a sophisticated line of ski and snowboard waxes for use by skiers, riders, racers, and shops. The current Wend snow wax formulations have come from over 50 years of progressive blend reformulation and on-slope and in-lab testing. This has been in conjunction with the feedback of some of the world's top ski and snowboard athletes. Athletes who know real speed, like Kitzbühel champ Darren Rolfs and 2019 Birds of Prey GS champion Tommy Ford. Wend no longer sells any products containing fluorocarbon compounds and instead utilizes natural, plant-derived and/or biodegradable additives that substantially increase the overall eco-friendliness of the Wend Snow Wax product line. Give Wend a follow on Instagram at Wend Waxworks and purchase your Wend products at wendperformance.com. And don't forget to use the code ADH20 for 20% off your purchase.
So 1984, no American had ever won a downhill, and Bill shocked the world. Snowing, he goes off the course in the Austrian hole, comes back on, comes through the finish, just silence, shocked the world. I came down, I had a top 20 and that qualified me for the Olympics. So again, it meant a lot to me, but to be part of that when Bill shocked the world was amazing. And he just started pissing everybody off, especially the Austrians and Swiss. So it was awesome for me to be a part of that. And we partied hard at the Post Hotel. Ras, you come through, you have to wait for the entire race. What was the party like? What was the crowd reception like? And what went on the rest of that day?
It was awesome. It was totally awesome, to be honest with you. And it was a very, very long wait. I sat down there for a long time and it started looking pretty good, 20 racers in or something, looking like this might happen.
Do you remember when you finally relaxed and felt like, oh, I won it, or did you wait for everybody to come down?
I think they started kind of celebrating about bib 30, the cameras were there. Well, the cameras are kind of around me the whole time, but this is kind of it, you got it. But I had to wait for the race to be over for any celebrations. Yeah. And I think we did our thing in the finish. I have at least have photos of all that, I remember. But I remember I had to go to a press conference for the first time. I'd never been on the podium. So that was a big deal. And I said, I'm not going to go drink. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to be super professional, to do the whole thing. And I went through the whole press conference. And I think it was 6 p.m. by the time I get back to the hotel. Come rolling in. These guys are at the Post Hotel there, and they're pretty loose already. And we're getting ready to eat dinner, and literally a 16-ounce glass of Jack Daniels gets sit down right at where I'm sitting, and I'm like, oh no. And that was kind of the start of a pretty awesome night.
Did we have a slalom the next? Usually it's slalom, right? It's combined, and we would always race in that. But
oh god, I used to always race in those, and I was always hungover, and it was horrible.
I'm sure we skipped it.
my worst wrecks were by far in slalom.
Yeah.
Terrible.
For all of us, man. Jeez.
Back to that day that you won in Wengen, and I'll tell a funny story because it's kind of it's a great look inside of the culture that we had going back then. But Tommy Moe's dad, Tom Sr., was there to watch the races. He would always come someplace every year and watch. And after, doing the standard partying after your teammate wins, I was like, okay, I'm going to bed. I went to bed. I'd had enough. And my bed was right next to these French doors that opened up from, I had a little balcony on the outside of my room. And I don't know what time it was, 3:00 or whatever. And those doors kick open with a big boom. And that wakes me up. And there's Tom Sr. standing over my bed with one arm inside of his jacket, looking around like this, like, they're after me, they're after me. And he pulls this big giant banner out that he had helped himself to over the down in town. And I think he shoved it either under my bed or Tommy's bed. I think Tommy was in the bed next to me, and you were in the other room. But Tom thought the cops were after him, and he climbed like Rapunzel up to the second-story balcony to our room, broke himself in, hid the banner, and then he disappeared. And I never saw him again. I didn't see him the next morning. I just know that banner appeared in our room the next day. So
Wow.
that was pretty cool. And tell us where that banner is now, Ras.
That banner is with my son and his family out in Utah, and his wife had it made into a curtain, and it's in my grandson's room.
That's cool.
Oh, that's cool.
So standing on the podium with Zurbriggen and Mueller, everybody hated Mueller, and including me, so I didn't really bond with him. But Zurbriggen and I, because we shared that podium, we're still friends today. Darren, I know you have friends all over, but Ras and AJ, any European racers that you connected with, either on a podium or something that you bonded with, and they were good friends?
I don't keep in touch with any of them. I kind of do my own thing here in the ranch and whatnot. I've kind of always been that way, but I think I bonded with quite a few of the guys after the World Cup that were on the downhill series, right? The Jeep King of the Mountain and the Ford downhill series, and Luc Alphon and Jean-Luc Cretier, great guys, and had some epic battles with Daniel Marr. Learned to be pretty good friends with him. He was like the most competitive guy I've ever met in my life. And it was a ton of fun, and it got to see these guys and compete against them in a totally different perspective.
Hey, Doug Lewis here, and I want to talk about the American Downhiller Speed Camp. American Downhiller is the leader in teaching young ski racers how to go fast and have fun. 2023 will mark the 6th annual American Downhiller Speed Skills Camp in Mammoth Mountain. Our speed camp is coached exclusively by current and former World Cup racers and coaches who are passionate about helping the next generation of athletes achieve their dreams. We specifically focus on aerodynamics, jumping technique, speed tactics, and the mental training required to safely navigate Super G and downhill race courses. If you are a ski racer who wants to go fast, check out our website, AmericanDownhiller.com, for all specific camp dates. Ras, and I know you probably don't know a lot of the young downhillers, but pick one piece of advice you would give, a 19, 23-year-old American who's, going over to Europe for the first time and starting to learn the downhills. What advice do you give the young American downhillers?
The World Cup Tour, it's tough, and you gotta pay your dues. And the best advice I think I could give is hang in there. Take the good with the bad. You're gonna definitely have some bad performances, and don't let that get to you, and just try to soak it all in. Look at these guys that are winning, and try to feel that vibe that they're going with, and it might take 4 or 5 times down a course to truly start to figure it out.
AJ?
I would say, don't make the mistake of thinking that those guys, those Euros that you're racing against, are invincible. Don't make the mistake of thinking that they're not at least a little intimidated too. Because after, I stayed in touch with a lot of guys, and I've bumped into a lot of guys in the last several years where I've been going to races and visiting as a retired ski racer, and you get to see guys, and we talk to people on these shows, and everybody to a guy will tell you stories about being intimidated, and like Don Paris was saying in the Bormio show, you got to respect the conditions. You got to respect certain hills, and that's their way of saying, they're a little bit intimidated, or it gets their attention. And I would say that, my impression going over to Europe the first time in racing was that everybody's at such a different level. And I think to some degree they are in the beginning, because they're comfortable in Europe because that's where they're from. They're comfortable on these tracks and on these mountains because that's where they're from. But as Americans, we can catch up to that really quickly, and you just can't go into it with your tail between your legs. You got to go in there with your eyes wide open, learn everything you can, and and take confidence in the little things, and let that build onto something that will propel you to be really fast.
Awesome. Darren?
Yeah, Kyle and AJ had really great points there. It is, there's a lot of learning to like pick up, trying to get comfortable over there as an American, learn how to kind of get through. I like to just not always be in race mode or ski racing mode. Like to walk around towns, check out, just the areas, and do some free skiing. And to me, that was a way where I was trying to like really enjoy the experience. But when it came down to racing, like I was really dedicated and put a lot of time into it, and focused on what, like my turning point for sure. I was super intimidated by seeing these big guns, especially like Herman Meyer, who, had any chance he had, he was trying to get in your head and just own you. But my turning point was where I finally focused on what I could control, believe in my program, and just like do what I could, like give my best effort.
I totally agree with all you guys. Number one, with RAS, patience, right? It took me 2 years just to learn all those courses, and I finally jumped into the top 10. It could take 4 times. So patience. The other thing, which we all said, is the first time I went over there, I started like 86, and I'd have a great run, and I'd finished 84th, and half the Americans that went over there were so bummed out, and they ended up saying, this is just too hard. But for me, that just fired me up. Like, just, okay, this is where I need to prove myself. This is what I need to do. I need to work even harder. So I see a lot of Americans, they go over there and they face the Europeans, and they have a decision to make right there. Are they going to just double down and work even harder? So patience and hard work, and don't ever stop believing in yourself. All right, I'm going to move on. We're running out of time. I'm just going to throw it out there. So Matthias Meyer, 3 Olympic goals, 11 World Cup victories. He just announced his retirement in Bormio. Foyts, who's going to retire this week in Wengen. He's a defending Olympic champion, world champion, 6 overall victories. They're retiring. And I guess, what do you think? We're all retired. What's the hardest thing that they'll face in the next year?
I would say for me, the hardest thing that for me was trying to figure out what my identity was after all that. You spend a whole lifetime trying, you keep climbing the ladder, and you get to a point where, okay, this is what I've been trying to accomplish and who I have always been my whole life. And then all of a sudden that's gone. And it's not even a gradual progression to that change. It's like overnight. And, redefining who you are I think is the thing. It's like when somebody says to you, what's your elevator pitch, right? And you bump into a stranger, hey, what do you do? Who are you? Man, I struggled for years to say, I'm a retired, whatever. I still don't remember what the hell, it was. And, now people ask me, who are you? What do you do? And I can talk about being a father and, having kids and all that stuff, because that's kind of what defines me now. But boy, that was the biggest switch for me. And I did have a really difficult time going to races and watching the guys that I used to race against and compete with, watching them race. I remember one of the first things I did was jump into television, and I was at races and interviewing people. And I'm like, I felt like I was one of them, but then I felt really out of place being the interviewer. It was just weird. That was the hardest part for me, was just re-identifying myself.
I'd have to agree with you there, AJ. That was it was tough once you leave, you're out, and I had a hard time watching it. And no offense, Darren, but I didn't watch a lot of your races. I got to be honest. I think there was a lot of years in there I still felt like I could be competing, and I just checked out and just didn't even really watch. I'd pay attention to results, but I just would never watch a race. And it took a long time. It took 10 years, I think. And you got to kind of, like you say, figure out who you are. I dove into the cattle business and got going there, and I started building houses and just keeping myself occupied. Got into competitive fishing. I remember 2002, they asked me to come forerun at the Olympics, and I said, absolutely not. No way. Because I still felt like I could ski pretty good. I'd been on the pro tour, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going out there and forerunning that course. That would just eat me up.
You could have shown us all up and smoked the course and put the fastest time down. Put back on the team. I'd say this, and I have the similar experience too, and I really didn't pay attention to any racing going on. I went back to Beaver Creek, Birds of Prey, my first year, and I came off a win there my last season, and I was on the sidelines just like shaking my head, like, what am I doing here? I mean, I should be in the gate. I could outski these guys right now. And but you put in perspective, like, I know how much I put into it, how much work I put into it. You can't just step in and be competitive at that level. It's tough. And I filled my kind of focus energy with doing some ski cross and jumping into just opportunities I had for skiing, for doing some big mountain, and I had a blast doing that for a long time. And then finally started coming back to the races and was able to kind of like give more of myself, like, as someone to, I guess, add to like our teammates, or not our teammates, but the kids that are the athletes that are on the US team at that point. And I think a big standout moment was when all three of us were in Wengen a couple of years ago, and we were loving it, soaking it up. I mean, Kyle, like, we went to dinner with all kinds of guys, and I guess, to reconnect with all those, past Europeans that we raced against was amazing. And we're all three of us are hanging out. We go to the US ski teams meeting, prior to the night of the race. And we all had something to say to our, the teammates there, or the US ski team guys there, and pass on some fun stories, some knowledge, and just showing that, we're there now to support them. I'm going to these races, like, yeah, I really enjoy it. I enjoy going to Beaver Creek and Wengen and Kitzbühel, and now we have like Palisades, Tahoe, the World Cup there, and Aspen again. And it's so cool to be there and just show our support. And I could just, really enjoy watching racing now, whereas the first few years, it was tough.
I think, AJ, you hit it. You lose your identity for a while.
Yeah, and you're right, Darren. I mean, I just did a little coaching stint this year. I went to the Lake Louise with the Ladies World Cup, and I'm standing there on the hill, and I'm like pointing at the line, and I'm telling these ladies, I'm like, here's your line, right? And in my mind, I can pull that off. Like, obviously, I know that I don't have the leg strength for it anymore, and I'll probably get scared going that fast anymore, but I know the line that, like, I still got it up here. There's no doubt about it. I still got it. I can still win a World Cup right here, but from here down, no way. And that part you'll never get rid of, right? Like, that part will be with you forever, which is good, but you just got to make sure that you keep a leash on that beast, because you don't want to find yourself going 65 on a pair of twin tips. That's when you're in trouble.
Doug Lewis here. If you are a U12, U14, or U16, Elite Team fitness camps are for you. This is not your average fitness camp, as we teach the vital skills of sports psychology and sports nutrition, along with tough, challenging workouts. You will leave camp with more power, strength, and agility, with a deeper understanding about nutrition, and with the mental skills of confidence, focus, and pushing limits, which will take you to the next level. Over our 30 years, we have coached Olympic champions, World Cup stars, NCAA champions, including U.S. ski teamers Michaela Schifrin, Lauren Masuga, Alice Merriweather, Jimmy Krupka, Grace Henderson, and Sammy Worthington. And finally, although we push our limits to the edge, we have a ton of fun. We are holding 2 week-long sessions this July at the Killington Mountain School. Find all the info at eliteteam.com. So, Ras, do you know enough to make any picks?
I do. I follow skiing
Okay.
avidly now.
So we're in Wengen. AJ has been the king of picks this year. Do you want to start with your picks for Wengen?
You want me to start?
No, let's have Ras.
Okay, good. Yeah, let him
Okay,
start.
I'll start. I will say Creekmeyer's going to win. He's going to double up. And Kilday's going to be second. And Foyt's goes out with a bang and he gets third.
Nice. Tough ones. Those are good. D Money.
Kyle, you just took all my guys, man. It's hard to like bet against the powerhouses for sure. And I had written down Kilday is 1, Creekmeyer 2, Foyt's 3rd. I mean, I feel like he's putting everything he possibly can in this last race, and he's got skills, you know, and to pay the bills there in Wengen. So I'm going to go with that top 3.
All right. Mine are not. I'm going to end with you, AJ, because you're the
Picking me
best.
last.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with Foyt's. I mean, he's going to win again on his last race. It's going to be too emotional. It's going to be awesome. He is the Kugelblitz. I'm going to go Kilda like everyone else, but I'm going to put Odermatt in there. I think this guy is too talented not to learn how to glide. Sorry, AJ.
Man, that's good. Okay, Odermatt. So I have to say, like, looking back at last week, like I think we all had Foyt somewhere in the mix, and he didn't even race. Like, that blew me away. I know he was sick and all that, but I agree with you. I gotta pick him. I'm also going to stick with Dom. You know, I liked our conversation with him last week. I really feel like, you know, that guy, he's kind of at the doorstep of kind of getting back to it. You know, he's got the experience. It just didn't work out in Bormio, even though he said he likes the ice and the bumps. He didn't perform that well. So maybe this week he can redeem himself. And then because Marco's not here, I'm going to have to be the one of us that picks an American, and I'm going to go with RCS because I think it's time for RCS to be on the podium in downhill.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think he's got our best shot of the American downhillers, RCS, and 5th in Bormio. So he's riding the, you know, a high right now as well. He's got some confidence.
Odermatt will be fun. I mean, that course, some parts of that course are not Odermatt style, but he might go in there and lay 2 fat turns in the Kernan S that nobody's ever seen before, and the game's over at that point. I mean, if he punches in a couple of arcs in there, it's game over. There's nobody's going to touch him. So
the one thing that bothers me now about that coming into Kernan S now with the last few years of these guys racing, some guys like put in like a little extra like full check turn to kind of like set that turn up. Some come in with like I think Dominic pulled a full flying, like, you know, pizza wedge, right?
Snowplow.
And I was like, why are you giving it up anywhere? And for me, it was like, it's a little more ballsy, and it's fun to be ballsy on these courses and try and just rail turns. And that's a tough one though. It does set things up. But what do you guys think about that? I mean, obviously
It's
Louis putting all these,
definitely
like, you know, like he knew exactly where I was going with that.
Yeah. It's an unwritten rule that you don't snowplow in downhill. I'm sorry, you have to turn in your downhill card if you snowplow in downhill. So that's something I've
You'd
definitely
be like DQ'd, pulled out of the race if you're doing that.
There's no
I
snowplowing
agree.
in downhill.
Totally agree.
Come on. Yeah.
There's no crying in baseball. There's no snow plowing in Wengen.
downhill. You know,
Hey, Ras, is there one more thing that just stands out about Wengen to you as being like something really unique and special?
I mean, who doesn't like the scenery of Wengen? It's like, it's unbelievable. I mean, just to be there and look around at the mountains is phenomenal, and the scene, the whole scene, no cars, it's outstanding. But that course in general just stands out in my mind, because once you figure it out, and not that many people do, you got it. And I'm not exactly sure what it is that clicked for me there, but I know kind of relaxing and finding my place to relax on that course was huge for me. You know, in Kitzbühel, when you get a chance to take a breath and actually, think about taking a deep breath. And every time I would come through the train tunnel, I would consciously take some deep breaths. I wouldn't stand up and give the legs a break or anything, because you're in between camera angles, but I would take some deep breaths and kind of settle into a nice relaxed tuck, and it got some blood going again. And that was kind of changed it for me there.
So Ras, I was the guy in training, not in race, but as soon as I went through that tunnel, I stood up because there was never any coach's video for that next 30 seconds before Honig. So I stood up, not in race, but I got a little, that's how I breathed a little oxygen into my legs.
No one's watching.
Maybe I learned that from you, because
Stand
I
up.
remember that. In between camera angles, you can get a little breather.
Only in training. Thanks for listening and watching to our American Downhiller podcast. Special thanks to Kyle Rasmussen for joining us, a true legendary American downhiller who shocked the world, winning Wengen in 1995, 11 years after Billy Johnson shocked the world and won it in 1984. Please spread the word about the podcast, share with your friends, coaches, teammates, and club. You can find us either on Spotify or Apple. And thanks to our American Downhiller sponsors, ADL Ski Club, Wind Wax, Elite Team Fitness Programs, and American Downhillers Camps. Have a happy holidays. And coming up in the next week, we have the original King of Kitzbühel, Franz Klammer, to take us down one hell of a ride on the Strife. For AJ, Darren, and Kyle, thanks for listening.